Dr. Karen Perkins, and I am so excited to invite you to another wonderful show of Power Surge. And I'll tell you what, we've had some phenomenal guests, but nobody beats the guest we have today. When I first met this gentleman, I was so giddy because I was like, oh, I got to meet him. And I've gotten to know him pretty well after that. And he is as phenomenal and exciting in person and as a friend as he is as somebody that you know, being that superstar that he is on stage and everywhere else. That being said, I want to welcome my wonderful friend, Daven Michaels. Daven, come on in.
Great to be here, Karen, and thank you for that introduction. That was very sweet.
Oh, well, you know, I just love you. I know I did an interview with you. Gosh, it's been going on 10 years ago. Boy, that aged me. With Speaking Empire. And that was a long time ago. But yeah, I did one of their VIP interviews with you.
My hair was back then.
Yeah, and mine was more poofy.
Okay.
Well, Daven, you are one of those men that have just achieved and achieved and achieved. And I know that you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth and a gold plate on your head. And, you know, you're like,
unfortunately, no. I wish I could have been. It would have been so much easier.
Well, we're going to go over. Well, we do go over in this show empowering stories that uplift and transformation and really inspire people to do the best that they can do. And I can't think of anybody better to take us through their journey than you to help uplift us and inspire us.
Sure. Okay. So my story. Well, you know, like so many entrepreneurs, I always thought I had this amazing story, but I met so many entrepreneurs speaking in 51 countries that, you know, everybody has an incredible story. If you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've got one too. And honestly, my story is many stories. I mean, I had several incarnations and successes and failures and what have you. But when I really go back to the story that kind of started it all, it was my very first business. And I started my business when I was 15. I actually graduated high school a couple years early, started my business, and I didn't graduate because I was particularly smart. I was just driven. And I was designing clothing for bands. This was in the early 80s. My bands had nothing going on. We started the company because we had one band that had a record deal. It was a band called Zot. Have you ever heard of Zot?
I don't think I have, actually.
Because nothing ever happened to Zot. they didn't happen. But and so we started this company because of them. It was the one client we had that had a record deal. But an incredible thing happened. MTV came on the air. This was in the 80s, changed the face of music and changed our lives. So I had these bands that had nothing going on. Within about 90 days, most of our bands had record deals. Within a year, they're selling millions of albums. And we rode that wave. And literally, I remember the biggest concert we had was like 600 people. And then all of a sudden, it was 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, 15, 25,000, 50,000 stadiums. And I found myself working with some of the biggest bands of the 80s and 90s, Prince, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Thompson Twins, Duran, lots of big bands. And it was incredible. And so that worked out well. From there, I started a telecommunications company. And we had some success there. 5 years later, sold to a public company, took back stock. That company got bought out. And that moment in time certainly changed my life. From there, I was a recording artist for a little while, and then I became the biggest EDM event producer in the U.S. I used to throw parties for 20,000 people a night, and then parlayed that into a career producing music and television for about 15 years. And then 15 years ago, started a sleepy little company in Asia. Because I had a production deal on that side of the world. And we started a little outsourcing company with 10 employees. And 15 years later, we had 1,000 employees at 123 Employee. We're now part of a conglomerate with 6,000 employees. So it all turned out. But yeah, that's kind of that's my story. Yeah.
I love your story. But I have a granddaughter that graduated at 15 as well. We've also driven And she is bright, and
Yeah.
so are you.
Yep.
But it was, she didn't like school, and she just wanted done with it as fast as she could.
You know what? That's what it was for me too. I hated high school. I wanted out.
Yeah.
I was the exact same motivation for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I find that interesting. What kind of things happened in your life, in your childhood, maybe, that gave you that kind of a drive, though? Because that's not a drive most people have.
It's totally true. And I'll tell you where that drive came from. I know exactly where it came from. So obviously you probably all know Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Well, I had a rich dad and poor dad too. And they were both incredible individuals. So my dad, I was adopted, by the way. So my dad that adopted me, who of course is my father, was the greatest man I ever knew. A wonderful human being. He was the type of guy that got up every morning, planted his feet on the ground, and was just grateful to be alive. He lived in a state of gratitude before it was in vogue. And it's funny, I always thought I was much more complicated than that. And I used to think actually that my best attributes came from my mom. But it wasn't until my dad passed away that I realized how much of him was in me, actually. He loved people. People loved him right back. And he was a master storyteller. But he was not a wealthy man. He was not a scholar. He wasn't a college graduate. He never made more than $30,000 a year, except for 1 year. He was a company man. He was with the same company for 40 years, except for 1 year. He got headhunted by another company and he got paid a lot more money. And that was the year of yes, because I always heard no. Can we have this? No. Can we have this? No. But that year was yes. So I loved that year, but it wasn't such a great year for my dad. So it didn't work out. He went back to the company. But my dad was not a wealthy man, but successful on so many other levels. My Uncle Mo, oh, and by the way, too, my dad grew up poor, very poor. The funny thing is he had a wonderful childhood, didn't even know he was poor till somebody pointed it out to him in his teens. So funny. So then there was my rich dad. My rich dad was my Uncle Mo. And my Uncle Mo was responsible for all of the greatest decisions in my life. And I'll expand on that in a minute. But my Uncle Mo was also grew up incredibly poor, son of a junkyard dealer, one of 10 kids, grew up to become a prolific Beverly Hills doctor and a sage, unbelievable person. He was a matriarch of the family for sure, and a wonderful human being as well. And so they lived in Beverly Hills. So on the holidays, we go to their house, big mansion, lots of toys, great fun food, awesome stuff. And then we go back to our house. And then we go back on the holidays back to Beverly Hills. It was incredible, so much fun, so fantastic. And then we go back to our house. and doing this year after year after year, I was like, wow, I really like what's going on at my Uncle Mo's house. And that got me really hungry at a young age. I wanted money. I loved earning money and doing things to make money. I just got into it. But it really drove me because all the people around me didn't experience that. All my peers didn't experience that. So they weren't hungry like I was, not at all. So I got really hungry. And so my Uncle Mo was responsible for all of the great decisions in my life, so much so that my Uncle Mo actually picked my parents for me. So it's a very cool story. So my Uncle Mo in the 60s, I'm dating myself, was waltzing on the dance floor.
I'm much older than you are. Don't go there.
Okay, so he's waltzing on the dance floor of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel with his wife, June. And this doctor rolls up on the dance floor. Hey, Mo, I hear you're looking for a kid. He's like, yeah, I am. And my Aunt June hits him, goes, Mo, are you crazy? We have 4 kids at home and a bun in the oven. Are you nuts? We don't need another kid. He said, not for us, for your sister. And she said, oh, okay. Well, and the doctor said, well, listen, if it's a girl, it's spoken for, but if it's a boy, you can have it. And that's how my Uncle Mo picked my parents for me. I turned out to be a boy, wow. And they got me. Yeah. So probably the 2 most important decisions of my life was, one, who the heck my parents were going to be. My Uncle Mo made that for me. And when I was 15 years old, I was in retail in clothing. I worked for I worked for Bullock's Wilshire, which is now Macy's. And I really took pride in it. I kind of took pride in whatever I did, but I loved serving people. Like, honestly, if I had a different life and I was like a server, a waiter, I would probably love it. I actually loved serving people, which kind of matriculates into what I do today, right? Even the
Right.
different things I do is to serve people, right? I love to serve people. I love it. And literally, I think I could bartend or be a waiter, and I probably love it. But whereas a lot of people, it would be hell for them, right? But
Right.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And in the not, I haven't really served people that many times, but when I do, I love it. When I have a party and I serve my friends, I love it. So anyways, so I really took pride in it. And this was an idea. This was just like service, right? Somebody would come in and I would give them exceptional service. And I really excelled. And I really thought that was going to be my life. I thought that I was going to, I wanted to go from an employee, I guess I was on the floor. I wanted to go to like assistant and then manager, and then maybe one day divisional manager, maybe one day store manager, and I don't know, maybe one day CEO of the company. But I didn't think that far in advance at all. But I really thought it was going to be my life. And then my Uncle Mo, one day, he told me, he said, you need to start your own business. And I was like, what? Like, that was not even on my radar. And it's so funny because I'm such an entrepreneur. It's like in my DNA, but I didn't know it. And I said, well, what am I going to do? And he goes, I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to do. He said, there's a lot of rich guys in Beverly Hills. They've got plenty of money and no time. He said, you're going to go shopping for them. You're going to number their clothes, number all their items on their outfits, and you're going to put them in their closets. I said, they'll pay me for this? He goes, yeah, they're going to pay you for it. Okay. So I started this business, and that was really the beginning. Like, I started doing it and I was like, okay, this is fine, but it's really not my personality. And that's when I started designing the clothing for music groups, because that was more my, what I was into. But yeah. So both of my dads, my Uncle Mo and my real dad, were my greatest mentors. And I've had a lot of mentors over the years, but they were by far the best.
I love that. What a fun story. I want an Uncle Mo. He sounds like a delight.
Oh my God, he was just an unbelievable human being. When he died, which was too early, it really left a gap in the family. Like, we still talk about him today. He's been gone for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, and you talk about him like he was going to come over for dinner tonight. And so you know what kind of an impression he left when you can think about him that way.
I wish he was. It'd be a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Well, you talked about how you love to serve, and I can attest that you are one that serves. You make sure that people get value with anything and everything they do that you might be involved in.
Sure.
And I think about the San Juan Social Club that you run. You want to be a member of the San Juan Social Club, even if you don't live in San Juan. They just have fabulous things there.
Should we tell everyone a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wish you would.
Sure. Yeah. So I love to build communities. Over the years, I have 10 books that have come out. My 11th is coming out soon. So I built a pretty big audience globally, a couple million people that sort of follow me. And I moved to Puerto Rico 6 years ago. And when I moved here, I started a sleepy little group. And the reason I say it was sleepy, because I moved here 5 months after Hurricane Maria. So things were rebuilding in Puerto Rico at the time. Yeah. And I started this little group. And I started doing events once a month. And the idea was to bring awesome people together, to bring people like me who are kind of new arrivals to the island together with locals that have grown up here, for food, drinks, conversation. And I've learned that from there, anything is possible. It's a very unsophisticated model with a very sophisticated purpose of bringing people together and creating understanding and relationships. And so I started this thing, and in the early days, we'd have 5 people that would show up. Fast forward though, 6 years later, we have 2,000 people in the San Juan Social Club. And so I do these events once a month as a public service. And then last year, I announced that we're going to have our first San Juan Social Club cruise. And the inspiration from this came from something that Karen and I have shared over the last decade. Is for the last decade, I've spoken on a different group cruise called the Marketers Cruise, which Karen and I like to go on. It's all of our incredible amigos from all over the world. And from very early on, I think my first or second cruise, I was like, I want to have a cruise. This would be incredible, because all of our best friends have come from that cruise. And the question is why? Well, if Karen, if you and I just meet on a Zoom call one time, we know each other. If we have dinner, we break bread together, we have some memories. If we go on a cruise together for a week, we become best friends. And if we do it every single year, it's like we're total BFFs, right? And so I wanted to create that with my community. So last year, I came up with the idea to do the San Juan Social Club cruise, our first cruise on Virgin. And it was really interesting because it was a lot of work to find an itinerary that worked. So first of all, most cruises in the US that do the Caribbean, what have you, in Mexico, they leave out of Florida typically, right? But I wanted this one to leave out of San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is where I live. There were very few itineraries that left out of San Juan that had days at sea. See, when you leave out of Miami, you've got a day or two at sea going in and out. And you need days at sea if you're going to have programming on the ship. And we're mostly fun, but we have speakers on the days at sea and content. And so it was tough to find an itinerary that even worked. It came down to two. One was on Royal, it was an old boat, and then the other was Virgin, which is reinventing cruising, right? And so then we finally had everything. And Captain Lou, who is my booker, who actually runs the Marketers Cruise, he came to me, he's like, okay, so, we've done all this legwork and now we were there, like we had it, but I still had to decide whether I was going to pull the trigger or not. So, he had the button to click for the contract. And I was like, it was on a Friday. I was like, let me take the weekend and think about it, because I wanted to do this for years. Matter of fact, I had the idea the second day I came to Puerto Rico, but the timing was terrible. It was just after Hurricane Maria. It wouldn't have worked. But now it was like, okay, it seems like the right time. We have thousands of people in the San Juan Social Club. I get it. Karen, you would get it because you and I have lived this for the last decade, but would everybody else get it? I don't know. And I was like, if I do this thing and I fail, and by the way, most group cruises fail. I think it's 7 out of 10 succeed, or maybe it's even, or sorry, what am I saying? 7 out of 10 fail. Okay. And so I was like, if I do this thing, it's going to be very public. And if I fall on my ass, everyone's going to see me, and, but I was like, okay, let's do it. And so we did it, and we had a great, a lot of people really reacted well to it. And earlier this year, we had our first San Juan Social Club. We had 238 cruisers from Puerto Rico and beyond. It was 75% people from Puerto Rico, 25% people all over the world, like you, Karen, who you were on the cruise. Yeah. And the San Juan Social Club cruise is for people that live in Puerto Rico and people that are interested in Puerto Rico, that want to network, make friends, and learn about all of Puerto Rico's amazing resources and opportunities. But the reality is, even if you don't have an interest in living in Puerto Rico, it's a great place to visit. And the group is super high caliber. And I think what ended up being our secret sauce was that the group was comprised of 75% people from Puerto Rico and then 25% people like you, Karen, who I've met all over the globe, speaking in 51 countries over 10 years. So really interesting people. And when I brought everyone together, this synergy was great. Our people from all over the globe got really excited about what people were doing in Puerto Rico. People in Puerto Rico got really excited about what people like you were doing. And besides having a blast, our cruisers did like 110 million in deals between each other, which was really neat. Yep. And now we have over 400 people booked for next year. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm sure we'll throw the link up on the screen if you want to check it out. If you do come and you sign up, I think it's like $1,000 deposit right now. And when you're booking, there's a drop down. It says who referred you. Make sure you put Dr. Karen on there, and then we'll make sure we put you all in the same area so we can all hang out. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, it was so cool. Like, I had this vision for what I wanted it to be. And it was like my vision, but I didn't know what it was really going to come out like, and that came out even better than I had hoped for. So it was great. And one of the interesting things, if you're an entrepreneur, your bottom line, we'll talk business for a second here. So your bottom line is, how much money you save and how much money you make, right? And so if you want to increase your bottom line, you either have to make more money or cut down your expenses. And one of your biggest expense in your entire life, your biggest single expense will always be your taxes, right? And And so, you want to do everything you can to mitigate your tax. You may or may not know, but Puerto Rico is a tax haven for Americans. Now, I am not a tax specialist. I'm not an accountant. This is not accounting advice. But I'm just here to tell you that if you make Puerto Rico your bona fide home, you can enjoy a 4% federal income tax on your export services that you offer. So not doing business in Puerto Rico, while doing business from Puerto Rico as opposed to in Puerto Rico. Now, what happens is, what's really cool is, guys like us and gals like us, guys and gals like me, come on down here, and we end up getting engrossed in the culture, and we fall in love with Puerto Rico, and then we end up starting businesses here and stuff too. Perfect example is, San Juan Social Club I do as a public service. The cruise, obviously people have to pay for the cruise. This last year, I gave all the ticket sale profits to charity, which benefit the island too. And so the tax incentives are Puerto Rico's number one, let's call it, product offering, export, what have you. That's how they attract people to the island, being a U.S. territory, and it works. It's certainly not perfect. Nothing is perfect, we know, but it's been helping out the island, and it's helping people that are willing to make Puerto Rico their home. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty eclectic, awesome group of people. And obviously it was the people that made it great, but Virgin also made it really awesome too. If you haven't been on a Virgin cruise, they've reinventing the cruising game for adults. There's no dining room. It's all specialty restaurants. They're all included. Your drink tab is included. There's no announcements. There's no kids. I mean, it's just
kids. Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, and they have specialty nights. They have party nights. I loved the red night. They had the parties. Yes. I mean, all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. The Scarlet Red party is like an all-night party in Ibiza. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. Now, you mentioned that I was on the cruise. Yes, folks, I was on the first one. I will. That's my claim to fame. Yes. One of my claims to fame. Yeah, I've been on, I don't know, 20 or so cruises that have been sponsored by one group or another.
Yeah.
And I can say with all honesty, 1000% honesty, that was by far the best cruise, the highest caliber of people I have ever been with.
I love it.
And I still have friends, we're keeping in touch, even though I'm not in Puerto Rico. I still have connections and friends that keep in touch and keep things going. And I watch we have the WhatsApp group, man. I watch what's going on in there all the time, and I get jealous. And when
you have to come visit, like maybe halfway through the year or something. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going to have to, when my mom finally turns 102 and decides it's time to go, I'm moving to San Juan. It's like, I love Ecuador, but I think I'm going to go to San Juan. And there are a lot of good reasons why, but if for no other reason, just go visit. But just the people that we met were just top-notch, high-quality people.
Yeah,
and everybody was there to help everybody else.
Totally. And the missions were really accomplished. One is I wanted to draw more attention to Puerto Rico as a place to, do business and live. Two, I wanted to raise a bunch of money for local charities in Puerto Rico, which we did. And three, I wanted our people to have fun, but come and network and make a bunch of money, doing deals between each other. So it just went great. I couldn't have been happier. I'm still overjoyed when I think about it. And I can't wait for the next one, which is 6 months away. So it's exciting.
Yeah. And I was one of the first people to sign up. So yes, folks, sign up.
Awesome.
Go to the link. Jay's put that link up again, because I want to make sure everybody gets signed up, because it was phenomenal. Absolutely. And I tell you, I hadn't heard about it from you or Captain Lou just yet, but just after you announced it, my good friend Mark from England called and said, "You've got to go on this cruise."
Cool.
And so, I mean, it was people from all around the world that were there, and it was fabulous. And I can't wait for this year's. I'm getting all ready and geared up for this year.
Yeah,
2025.
What am I saying?
Yeah, this upcoming one. Yes. I'm trying to convince my mom she has to go with me.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
I understand.
but a lot of fun. Well, I liked how you made it service, and even though it was people did get together and did deals together, it wasn't
no.
I'm trying to think of how to say this diplomatically.
Very casual.
It was very casual. It wasn't like you get on some of these cruises that end up being a sales cruise, and it's not what can I do for you, it's what can you buy from me.
Yeah.
No, what can I tell you?
Super chill. And the cool thing about the cruise is, you can do with it what you want. I mean, you can, sleep in late and hang out on the ship. You can go on the excursions. You can do stuff together with us. I mean, you can come to see the speaker speak or not. You can go to spa. I mean, so many options on a cruise. So.
Oh yeah, it was super chill. And all of the events were fabulous. The speakers were fabulous. Oh, see the boat moving, folks. I want to point this out. That is Daven's patio that he's overlooking the water on. This is not a screensaver.
Yeah, I'm in my office right now.
First time I saw that, I went, wow, what a cool screensaver. And then you went, nope, it's from my office. And you held it. And I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
so I missed my ocean view, but I've got the red rocks here. So they're beautiful. I'm happy with those.
Red rocks are
beautiful. I'm happy with those. Yeah. Well, if you were to give advice to new entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Besides network, and we'll get back to that because networking is probably one of the most important things. Yeah. Besides networking, what would you advise a new entrepreneur or somebody who doesn't want to work the 9 to 5 anymore and want to venture out? What would be some advice for them?
Sure. So certainly networking is in that mix, but I'll go a little deeper. So honestly, I believe the lifeblood of all business is relationships, number one, marketing, number two, and or money in this close runner-up 3. But two things. One is you have to be tenacious. I mean, that you just can't give up. It doesn't matter. You can't take no for an answer. You can't give up. You just have to keep going. That's number one. If you do that, obviously you won't fail. Eventually you'll figure it out. And two, your network is your net worth, and I'll go deeper on that and explain. So I always say if I had to do all over again, I would have done my life actually totally different. It all worked out for me, but I had to work incredibly hard. And if I had to do all over again, not to say that this is easy, but it's different. I would have got great grades in school. I would have gone to a great school. I would have got great grades at that great school. And I would have tapped into the alumni network in that school. So for example, let's say, I did really well and I went to Princeton. I would tap into there's at any great school, there's a massive alumni network of people that all they want to do is help you succeed. Right. And to have that kind of team when you're starting off would be life-changing. Now, a lot of people actually go to great schools, and quite often I'm amazed that they actually don't tap into the alumni network. Some do, some don't. But for me, when I started my business at 15 and I had nothing. I had less than nothing. and besides not having any money and very little acumen, I had no connections. I had no network. And I had to work so hard. And over the years, I developed an unbelievable network. I mean, I have friends that are, presidents and princes and rock stars. I mean, I feel like I can get to just about anyone. Somebody was running for president recently. They asked me to throw a party for them here, which I did. I mean, just, it's crazy. But that took me decades to build. And I think today, knowing what I know, I could have done it way faster. But because I didn't have a network, I lacked confidence too. I was tenacious. I believed that I would make it happen, but I lacked confidence, like at a deep level, because I just didn't have that network, and I didn't know how to do it. And so my point is, it's all about creating a network and networking, because it's so valuable. For a decade and a half in my teachings, I'm a mentor and a teacher, and I've taught hundreds of thousands of people globally, probably, right? But I would always start my presentations early on by saying the lifeblood of all business is marketing. And I would say, if you had your marketing dialed in, if you had tons of leads coming through the door, if your bank accounts were overflowing with money, you could probably buy yourself out of just about any challenge you face in your business today. And of course, that is true. It still remains true today. But a few years ago, I really kind of revamped that. I always knew that business is relationships, but I actually believe relationships are even more valuable than marketing and money. Especially when you start doing bigger deals, right? When you're playing a bigger game, it's all about those relationships. The bigger the relationships, the bigger the bank account, right? And also the bigger the fulfillment. I mean, there's you can do more, see more, experience more, create more, serve more with a bigger, awesome network. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Mm-hmm.
Well, I like that, and it's one of the things. In fact, I think, actually, I think I did. I gave you one of my first Living First Class home study kits.
Nice.
But living first class, what does that mean? And for me, it means being in a position mentally, physically, and financially to be of service to those around me.
For sure.
And you've got to be fit physically, emotionally, and financially.
100%.
And you talked a little bit about the self-esteem. Yeah. I know when I run into my biggest challenges, it's when I've allowed my self-esteem to lag. And I have to get back in there and remind myself that, you know what, I'm okay.
Yeah, self-doubt's for sure. Yeah.
What's one of your secrets besides being, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I find though that the most successful people, they just push past that, right? It's something that's happening to them. It certainly doesn't define them, and you just got to push past it. But anyways, you were saying, what was your question?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. How do you see because I've seen it, and I agree with you 100%. You say, yep, I failed on that one, but I'm still moving forward, and I'm great and good at what I'm doing. Yeah. But how do you find, for those that haven't already found the success and don't already have that high self-esteem and know that they're going to succeed no matter what happens?
Yeah.
And you hear stories of multi-billionaires who lose everything. Yeah. And they lose everything, and they're like, that poor guy in the gutter that's living on the street is worth more than I am, because I've not only lost everything, but I'm in debt that much more.
Yeah.
But they know they can succeed, so they know they'll get there again. And I think that the rich dad, poor dad, I think the poor dad, those people who live from a lack instead of live from an abundance, they don't believe that they can have, deserve to have, will have, that it's a possibility. And that saddens me greatly. But if you were to give one person, or everybody, but if one person were to get a real big aha and say, I can be all that in the bag of jelly beans, what would you advise them?
Well, I think you obviously have to believe in yourself, right? But there are times that you may second guess yourself. You may not be believing in yourself. But you mentioned, having an abundancy mentality. If you believe that others can make it happen, then why the hell can't you? I mean, there's no reason why everybody else is making it happen and not you. Like why? I mean, if you just are tenacious and you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, you will make it happen. So if you can't believe in yourself, just believe in what's possible, right? That's my armchair advice. I mean, there's no reason why you're like this single person that can't make it happen, right? I mean, anyone can make it happen. You just have to be persistent. So yeah.
One of the pieces of advice my dad used to give was, nothing in life is 100%, including failure.
Right.
So, the people who succeed, 1% of the time something happens and they go, well, yep, I stumbled and fell, but I get back on the horse and I'm going forward. But people who are like, oh, nothing ever turns out, nothing in life is 100%, and that does include failure.
Yeah, you just have to keep going. When I zoom out on my illustrious business career, it looks incredible. When I zoom in, it's like you can see all the bumps, but I stayed agile, and you just keep pivoting, and you do what you have to do, and you figure it out.
What would you say has been your biggest pivot that you've had the opportunity to make?
Well, I've had so many, but one just happens to come to mind. So we opened the clothing business. Eventually, it ended up doing well, which was cool. I then started like kind of an unsexy business. I got into the telecommunications business. And I started a company that did voicemail. Okay, like everybody has voicemail today, but there was a time when it didn't exist. Okay, I'm dating myself. Back then, you had live answering services, and so we were one of the first carriers that had what's called a Centigram system, which was a voicemail platform, and it was groundbreaking. Like it was this idea of robots picking up the phone. Like, and now it's hard to even imagine that voicemail is cutting edge, because everybody has voicemails. It's so ingrained in our world, but it didn't exist. You used to have live answering services that would pick up the phones for multiple people. And so we had the first technology to do that. And, I always say you can always tell the pioneers because they're the ones with the arrows in their back. And and that was us in the voicemail business. It was too early. People just didn't get it. We're like, yeah, it's an automated answering service. So like, huh? They couldn't get it. So we ended up
Why would we want that? Yeah.
They just didn't understand it. So we ended up pivoting and going into the paging business early on before cell phones. But I'll share another kind of pivot with you as well. This is kind of interesting. So once again, we were early in the outsourcing business. So when we got into the biz, we were doing virtual assistant services for entrepreneurs. Now, big companies were outsourcing to like India, like American Express and what have you. So call centers were doing it, but entrepreneurs weren't doing it yet. We had a service that entrepreneurs needed, but they didn't want it because they didn't know about it. And you always want to sell a want, not a need. Everybody's always trying to fill a need in the market. Fill a want, because I want the new Porsche. I'll pay whatever it costs. You know what I mean?
Right.
You want to fill a want. And so nobody wanted what we had because nobody knew that we existed. And so it was a tough time for us in the early days. And also we were a US company doing business in the Philippines. Today, that's totally normal. Back then it was un-American, really un-American. Like we would get FU calls on a regular basis and emails and, oh, we're going to burn your building down. And it was gnarly.
No,
it was not cool. And so that was tough. And then Tim Ferriss's book came out, The 4-Hour Work Week. And that was one of the tipping points in our business, because all of a sudden we went from being like public enemy number one to being the belle of the ball. It was quite a pivot, quite a transition. But really, probably one of the biggest tipping points in the business. Well, first of all, let's back it up. So we were talking about pivots. So I realized early on there was no market for what we had. It existed, but it wasn't there yet. And I was like, we're gonna have to somehow carve out a market, create a market for us. And so that's when I began to do info marketing. I started writing books. I started creating info products. I started speaking on stages. I started doing webinars, and we started doing our events globally: Australia, US, Europe, Asia, New Zealand. And we began educating our prospects and turning them into clients. And that is how we began to grow the market. And also what was cool is because we went, a big shift in our business was going from marketing to one to marketing to many. In the early days, one-on-one deals, once we made this switch, I never opened my mouth without to hundreds or thousands, no problem, or tens of thousands of people. If I wrote a book, 100,000 people read the book. If I did an info product, hundreds of thousands of people would get that info product. If I spoke on a stage, 1,000 people would see it.
Right.
You made me cough.
I know, it's catchy.
That's so funny.
It's now my eyes are watering because I was trying to hold it.
That's so funny. So those created tipping points in our businesses, and those were, big shifts along the way. And we just had to stay agile and flexible and pivot.
What's your next journey leg looking like?
Yeah. So these days, I'm on the boards of several companies. I'm scaling a project right now. I'm supposed to be retired. that didn't work out too well. But these days,
boring. Who wants to retire?
I started to do it for a minute, and I did get really boring. Nobody really wanted to hang out with me. So the big shift today is I'm only involved in the things that I'm wildly passionate about. So I wouldn't be on this podcast with you today, Karen, if I was not passionate about it. So that's kind of the big shift. I'm involved in a lot of philanthropic projects. Over the last year, the San Juan Social Club bought 3,000 toys for the kids of the Mentee Boys and Girls Club. So we gave all the families Christmas. We raised about $41,000 on the cruise for the Mentee and another charity. We helped the Boys and Girls Club raise $180K in a day. That was pretty neat. So we're doing a lot of cool stuff. It's, very gratifying. I've got the cruise and the San Juan Social Club, just kind of doing fun things. We just launched my new podcast here in Puerto Rico.
Wonderful. Tell us about it.
Sure. It's called the Puerto Rico Business Broadcast. And I neglected to mention that earlier, but Jace, if you can still add it up there, put it on the screen. It's Puerto Rico Business Broadcast, not podcast, but broadcast. And I'd love for you to check out the show. We spotlight local thought leaders here in Puerto Rico, and it's really interesting. If you're outside of Puerto Rico, I think you'll still find it very interesting. You'll be mind blown about the kind of opportunities that exist here in Puerto Rico. It's, mind blowing. Like, let me give you guys an example, because I think your people who are watching this, Puerto Rico Business Broadcast. Perfect, Jarvis. Thank you. .com. Okay. So I'll give you an example, just like one example. And I believe we have like 80 acts, or we have a lot of different acts. They're called acts. But here's one. So let's say you buy, an old 7-bedroom, 7-bath building. Okay. And let's say maybe you spend 800. Well, let's say you spend 1.2 million on it. Okay, whatever.
Okay.
And then you spend 800 on the reno. Okay. So now you're into it for 2 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Puerto Rico needs more hotel rooms. And so you turn this into an Airbnb, and you can get a tax credit for 40% back. Did you hear about this on the cruise?
I did, but keep telling about it, because it's fabulous.
Yep. So you get a 40% tax credit. So that's 800 grand. Okay. Back. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't have 800,000 in taxes, or you might be like, perfect. Thank you, Jarvis. Or you may be thinking, well, I'm going to move to Puerto Rico where I won't pay taxes. You can sell that tax credit. So you can sell that to somebody that wants to offset their taxes a little bit. Typically you can sell it at, 90, 85 cents on the dollar. So, you could get back, let's say 700 grand in cash for your $2 million investment. Yep. Totally insane. And that's just one of the different acts.
That's cool. Before you make money on the investment.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'll give you another one. So Puerto Rico wants to encourage people to have electric cars. So if you have a car with a plug, you can import it here tax-free instead of the 30% import tax.
Oh, so, awesome.
And that's just a couple. We have R&D credits. We have all kinds of cool, I'm learning about new stuff all the time. And I want to educate the world on that and have them, come move to Puerto Rico. So it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
We didn't have to have a car in Ecuador because, well, you didn't have to have a car because it was so cheap to take a taxi anywhere you wanted to go.
Were you in Quito? You were in Quito, right?
No, actually, I was in Salinas. There on the beach is the southwest corner. But nice. We just got back here a couple months ago, and yes, I bought my Tesla right away, and I was excited because now I have my electric car.
Nice. And love it. You love Tesla.
You know what? I'm really loving it.
Yeah,
I was surprised. Cool. I love it as much as I do.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying it's the only electric car out there. I'm just saying we got us a Tesla. I'm really loving it.
Yeah. Another cool car. Super cool.
Yeah. Especially not going to the gas station. I really love that.
Totally. If I had a Tesla, I'm sure I'll get one at some point. If I had a Tesla, I would definitely get a self-driving Tesla so I could work while it's driving. Yeah.
Well, we've got the supervised self-driving. The next upgrade will be full self-driving. And it's funny because I used to not let my husband drive because, quite frankly, he scared me. And now he does all the driving all the time. He puts in where we're going. He sits back, has his hands on his lap, and just watches as we go.
I love it. Yeah. I think all women have a problem with their husband drivers. Yeah.
Well, he can't make a right turn without running over a curb.
Yeah, okay. No, not anymore. That's
he says, Karen, come on. You do worse because I speed. He runs over curbs, I speed. So we both scare each other. But the full self-driving is wonderful. Parking and the summons. You come out of the store and say, okay, come pick me up. And the car pulls out of the parking space and drives up and picks you up at the door.
That's so cool. That is so cool.
Anyway, technology has come a long way. You were talking about the voice messages, and I was laughing because see, this ages me, Daven. You're too young for this one. I remember the party lines. I remember when the phone rang and you didn't know if it was you or your neighbor's call.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know,
right.
just the landlines for a single family phone came out when I was, about 10 years old.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so, I mean, is that crazy? And people are like, you didn't know who's called? No, there were certain kinds of rings, but and you never knew who was listening in on your phone.
Right. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's crazy.
And now we all have our cell phones, and we're taking selfies, and we're talking on people live like this. And 20 years ago, people are like, "Oh, I don't want my face to be. Don't take a picture of me." And now they're like, "Hey, take a selfie."
Totally.
It's wonderful how things have progressed and changed and continue to progress and change.
Yeah.
And people like you are at the forefront of it. And I appreciate that, and I admire that in you, because your relationship building, which leads the networking, helps with the networking, but your relationship building skills and the way you make everybody feel like they are the most important person in your life. Now, really, we know it's me, but I know everybody else believes them too.
No, I love it. I love people so much. They're like, maybe I'm glad that I do that. It's great to hear that, but I do it because I'm just so curious. I'm so interested in what people are doing and what they're all about and what their life is like. And I love it. I measure my life in the amount of, friendships and experiences I have. And so I dig it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. Now, money's important. Don't get me wrong. We all love money, and there isn't anything you can't buy your way out of, just about anything. But if you have all the money in the world and no relationships and no experiences, it's a very sad, miserable life. And so it's important to have the relationships and the experiences to make it a well-balanced circle.
Yeah. My Uncle Mo used to say, if you're, he said, like, if you're poor and you're unhappy, that's one thing. He goes, but if you're rich and you're unhappy, you really have a problem.
Something wrong with you.
Yeah. But it happens.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're getting up there toward the top of the hour. I would love it if you could leave us with words of wisdom or a quote or something and I'm going to have, say, Jace, get ready, get those fingers typing quickly. Give us a quote or something that we can put up there and everybody can say, oh, that came from Daven. Gosh,
I don't know if I have a quote on the spot here, but, I will tell you that, if you invest in your relationships, if you go deep in your relationships, that's where the gold is. So, if you take a true, this is too long for Jason to type out, but if you take a real interest in people, it all comes back to you. Like, I'll give you an example. So, the last cruise, we gave, the ticket sales, profits to charity and what have you. But besides just, having a great time getting to know everyone, like the deal flow, I have a massive amount of deal flow that just comes from that. Right. And it's not by design. It's a net result of investing in your relationships. So Daven Michaels says, invest in your relationships.
I like that. Invest in your relationship. That's where the gold is. I love that. Well, Daven, you are phenomenal. I take a moment and remind everybody to join us again next week for yet another great guest. And, I don't know if we can top Daven, but we'll do our best. And remember, Power Surges every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And don't forget, Mondays we have Karenisms. And Karenisms is also 10 a.m. Pacific at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we just go over my thoughts and give you quotes and things that are not necessarily my own. So that being said, Daven, I appreciate you. And thank you for all your advice and words of wisdom.
Thank you.
All right. Ciao for now.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Power Surge. If you found anything informative, useful, or entertaining, please hit the like button. Now, we told you how to get in touch with the guest, but to find out more about me, my coaching, events, or resources, be sure to go to drkarenperkins.com. Again, that's drkarenperkins.com. And if you haven't already, subscribe.